If you've been feeling tired for no reason, your mind is trying to tell you something. It always starts like that. A slow exhaustion you can't quite name. Not the kind that sleep fixes. Not the kind that comes from long days or short nights. This is the kind of tiredness that settles behind your eyes and lives inside your chest. The kind that makes you second-guess your memory, your intentions, your worth. And if you've been feeling this way around someone in your life, today's story may finally give you language for what your body has already noticed. I want to take you into a moment, one that might feel strangely familiar. Someone is sitting at their kitchen table late at night, their phone glowing beside them. They're replaying a conversation they had earlier. It wasn't a fight. No yelling. Just confusion. They were sure they remembered something correctly. They were sure they didn't say it that way. But the other person insisted they did. And somehow, even though they know what happened, they still walk away from the conversation feeling at fault. Feeling clumsy. Feeling apologetic for things they're not even sure they did. Maybe you felt that too, like your mind is slowly slipping out of your hands. So tonight, we're going to walk through emotional manipulation in a way that helps you see what's been hiding in plain sight. And by the end of this video, you'll understand the psychology behind why manipulators do what they do, the subtle early signs your brain picks up long before you consciously notice, and most importantly, how to get your clarity back without losing yourself in the process. Let's go back to that kitchen table. The phone buzzes. New message. Sorry you felt that way, but you really overreacted. Notice that sentence. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I hear you. Just a gentle shift of responsibility back onto the person who's already doubting themselves. Here's the thing. Most people don't realize emotional manipulation doesn't begin with big moments. It begins with 100 tiny ones. Subtle redirections. Innocent-sounding comments. Statements that make you feel like the problem isn't the situation. It's your perception of it. Psychologically, this works because of something called cognitive dissonance. The discomfort you feel when your internal truths collide with someone else's version of reality. Manipulators rely on this. They know that when you feel confused, your brain tries to make sense of the contradiction, and in the process, you may unconsciously choose the explanation that maintains the relationship rather than the one that protects your well-being. This is especially true if the manipulator is someone you love, admire, or depend on. But let's slow this down. Emotional manipulation has patterns. Predictable ones. And once you can see those patterns, they lose their power. The first red flag. You apologize too much. Not because you believe you're wrong, but because you're trying to keep the peace. Your brain has learned that your discomfort matters less than their reaction. The second. Conversations leave you drained instead of understood. Healthy dialogue gives energy. Manipulative dialogue extracts it. The third. You start keeping mental scorecards. Not because you're petty, but because you're trying to stay grounded in what actually happened. Your memory becomes something you feel you need to defend. The fourth. Your body reacts before your mind does. Your shoulders tense when their name appears on your screen. You rehearse what you want to say before calling them back. Your heartbeat changes, even if the conversation seems harmless. And here's where brain science comes in. Your nervous system is designed to detect subtle interpersonal threats long before your conscious mind understands them. This is called neuroception, your brain's ability to sense danger without thinking. When you're around someone unpredictable, dismissive, or manipulative, your body picks up the pattern even if your mind is still rationalizing it away. Remember the person at the kitchen table. Here's the twist. This wasn't the first confusing message, or the 5th, or the 10th. This is a pattern month in the making. And tonight, something inside them finally whispers. This doesn't feel right anymore. That whisper is important. That's the beginning of waking up. Because emotional manipulation isn't about intelligence. You can be brilliant, self-aware, educated, stable, and still fall into these dynamics because manipulators don't attack your logic. They attack your safety, your belonging, your desire to be understood. They use your empathy against you. They use your openness to distort your perception. And they do it slowly, gently, intentionally, or sometimes even unconsciously. Because manipulation can also be a learned survival behavior in people who fear losing control. But you, sitting here watching this video, you're starting to see it. So let's walk through the psychology even deeper. Manipulators often use 4 core strategies. 1. Gaslighting. This isn't just making you doubt yourself. It's systematically replacing your internal narrative with theirs. Over time, your brain starts relying more on its interpretation than your own. 2. Guilt shifting. Instead of addressing the issue, they move the spotlight onto your reaction. You express a boundary. They call you too sensitive. You express a need. They say you're asking for too much. 3. Intermittent reinforcement. This is psychologically the most powerful. You get affection, validation, or understanding unpredictably, like emotional slot machines. It rewires your reward pathways and keeps you emotionally hooked. 4. Isolation through confusion. They don't tell you to stop talking to others. Instead, they make you feel like no one else would truly get it, or that your feelings aren't reasonable enough to bring up with friends. You slowly pull away on your own. Once these patterns form, your brain becomes conditioned to anticipate their emotional weather. You watch their tone, their phrasing, their moods. You walk on eggshells long enough that it becomes muscle memory. Let's return to the story. The person at the kitchen table reads the message again. Sorry you felt that way, but you really overreacted. But this time, instead of shrinking, something inside them pauses. Their breathing slows. Their body notices the heaviness before their mind rationalizes it away. And then the thought arrives, not loudly, but clearly. Why am I always the one apologizing? Why do I feel worse after every conversation? Why do I feel like I'm disappearing in this relationship? This is the most dramatic moment, because it's the first moment of truth. And truth, once seen, can't be unseen. Here's what most people don't realize. Emotional manipulation isn't about control of your actions. It's about control of your interpretations, your emotional compass, your sense of meaning. But the moment you notice the pattern, the spell breaks. Because now you're not reacting, you're observing. You're not absorbing, you're evaluating. You're not drowning, you're resurfacing. And you start remembering things you forgot while trying to keep the peace. You're allowed to ask questions. You're allowed to need clarity. You're allowed to feel respected. You're allowed to trust your memory. You're allowed to walk away. Here's the emotional truth you might not have heard enough. Manipulation isn't a reflection of your weakness. It's a reflection of their fear. People manipulate because they fear losing control, losing closeness, losing the version of themselves they want to believe in. But none of that is your burden to carry. So how do you break free? Not with confrontation. Not with dramatic exits. Not with revenge. You break free by choosing clarity over confusion. By choosing boundaries that protect your emotional reality. By choosing relationships where your nervous system feels safe. You stop defending yourself against accusations that were never yours. You stop justifying emotions that were always valid. You stop trying to prove your heart to someone committed to misunderstanding it. And slowly, sometimes quietly, suddenly you return to yourself. The person at the kitchen table stands up. They put the phone down. They take a long, slow breath. Not because the situation is over, but because they're finally ready to see things as they are, not as they hoped they would be. If you're listening to this and something inside you feels lighter, that's not an accident. That's recognition. That's your brain rewiring itself toward clarity. That's your inner voice resurfacing after being quiet for too long. And if this story spoke to you, if it helped you see emotional manipulation through a clearer lens, if it loosened the tightness you've been carrying in your chest, if it reminded you that your confusion was never a character flaw, then stay a while. This space is for quiet realizations. The late-night truths. The moments when something finally clicks, not because someone convinced you, but because your body exhaled and said, yes, that's it. Here you'll find stories that don't judge you for staying too long, caring too much, or losing pieces of yourself along the way. Stories that help you understand your patterns without shame. Stories that guide you gently back to the version of you who trusts your own clarity, your own memory, your own worth. So, if this resonated, if even one line felt like it was written with you in mind, subscribe for more. You deserve relationships that feel safe in your nervous system. You deserve conversations that leave you grounded, not dizzy. You deserve a life where your energy is restored, not drained. And remember, your mind has been trying to tell you something. Tonight you finally heard it.